Maybe I'll just start off with just a brief explanation of that. That video was actually produced about 2 years ago, actually, when we first conceptualized KLIP. And so the concepts are there, although the designs of the buildings are being developed right now. The idea of a park integrated with shopping, integrated with office residences, and of course high-speed rail links are all there. Happy to answer any questions on that later, but maybe I'll just thank Firdaus for that kind introduction. Although I'm not high up in Accenture, I left as a partner after a couple of years of partnership over at Accenture. Again, happy to talk about that on anything that you want to know, because I decided that it's a bit awkward when I was asked to do this. I thought that, wow, what a great honor. And then I thought, wow, it's a bit weird to be talking about yourself and have slides about yourself. So I thought it would be better to have more interaction, get you to ask questions, whatever questions you may have. Although sometimes I think one of the questions on the Facebook page was about the MRT, and I explained actually that no, 1MDB doesn't do the MRT. that one is Dato' Azhar, and happy to forward questions to him. Don't know whether, I think he did a very good piece, I think over the weekend, explaining the whole tender process, and I thought that was a very good step to go and explain. Because sometimes I think our government does things and don't explain it very well, and after kena tembak only, then they want to go explain. Okay, so that's all that I have to start with. Let you be the guide as to what you guys want to talk about, what you want me to talk about. At a suitable time, maybe we can show the Sunabasi video. It's also a pretty nice concept, our real estate development. Any questions so far? Or I'll go talk a bit about 1MDB.
Yeah, maybe you can start, because usually we have...
Not warm up yet.
Yeah, don't warm up yet.
Okay, 1MDB. Now, 1MDB is a wholly owned government company. Some people say that we're a fund, some people say that we are a drain on the government's money, some people say we are a good thing, some people say we're a bad thing. But what we like to call ourselves is a strategic development company. Something that really, we haven't really tried before in this country. The model that we're following is actually Mubadala of Abu Dhabi, where it is a 100% owned development company as well. What we mean by development company, it's a way for the government to have sort of private sector thinking and private sector practices, yet with the government support, to go and catalyze and do projects that are otherwise difficult for the private sector or for other government agencies to do. An example, an immediate example is actually what you just saw on the screen just now, which was KLIP, where the vision for KLIP is to build something in KL that will catalyze the growth of KL, but also set the benchmark of what KL is capable of in terms of providing world-class infrastructure, in terms of providing a world-class environment. Simple things, for example, like MRT connectivity. The fact that you can step out of the MRT, go into the station and walk in air-conditioned comfort all the way to your office, maybe even through some retail. So in the morning you get out the MRT, you go singgah your Starbucks, get your donut, go to work, all in air-conditioned comfort. Doesn't matter if it's raining outside. This is something our fellow neighbours in Singapore have taken for granted for so long, right? And then for us, it's actually quite difficult to do if you don't have the financial resources and the backing of the government to do so in a holistic way. The tension of the private sector having to satisfy shareholders, you have to have profits. It makes it very difficult for the developers of those kinds of organizations to go and make the compromises that really is required of them to actually go make money. Whereas for our side, it's actually that we want to focus on what we can do to bring KL to the next level. So we invest in infrastructure, we invest in the technology, we invest in making sure that the investments are aligned, that you don't have different connectivity options. So your sidewalks, actually, for example, these are the little details, right? The sidewalks actually would be continuous throughout the district. You don't have to walk, go down, and then you find walk, and then some broken pavement because someone dug it up 2 days ago. Who has walked on Jalan Sultan Ismail recently? So that actually, honestly, Jalan Sultan Ismail right now, they are actually digging up the entire thing, I think from Jalan Nampang all the way to the Raja Chula monorail to improve it. They are actually taking steps to dig up the whole thing, put in ducting for your utility cables and so on and so forth, so you don't have to keep digging up Jalan Sultan Ismail. That is something that we will be building into KLIP. We will be building into Sulawesi as we do the development. It costs more upfront, but this is something that is important for us to do now, so that you don't have to keep digging up the roads. So that's our flagship project currently, the first project for KLIP. Our other sectors include energy, agribusiness, as well as tourism and hospitality. We're still about 2.5 years old, so real estate now is pretty much up and running, going already, so we're going to focus on the other 3 sectors. We're about 100 odd people right now, half of which are actually doing the real estate operations. We're still hiring, so anybody interested, our HR head is here taking resumes. Actually, she's not really supposed to take resumes. Yeah, so we have about 100 people, as I said, great opportunities for growth. Ask questions.
Okay, well, usually we would have the speaker speaking for a bit. Maybe this time a bit different, but want a bit more impression. Maybe Aiman can ask a question.
Okay, this is rigged, by the way.
Yeah.
You were formerly a consultant, and you were consulting for a long time, and you climbed consulting ladder all the way to becoming a partner. And you moved to 1MDB. In your opinion, what does the consulting career do not prepare you for moving towards the industry, and what do you find difficult in adapting towards the industry?
Very good question. About 13-14 years in the consulting area. The big difference is actually you are always providing advice, and you are not really on the hook for what actions, and most of all, you're not on the hook for the results of those actions when you're a consultant. The experiences are similar, the industry knowledge, the difficulties in implementation, but it's always different actually when you are the person whose signature goes on the dotted line, and you are responsible and accountable for that, whatever actions that you're taking. So that's the major difference between being a consultant and being a client, effectively. But it's also fun being a client, because then you know all the consulting tricks, and so when the consultants come and talk to you, you know what to ask and you know how to keep them honest. So all the Accenture people, please.
Okay, maybe you have one more quick question.
Good evening, Shahrol. What's on the street is that the real estate market is somehow probably in a bubble, or could be in a bubble in 3 to 5 years time. So what are your views on that? And what do you see? Are there any risks on the 1Malaysia development in terms of Sulawesi? If that doesn't, if really the bubble pops? Thank you.
Thank you. That's actually, again, something that we have thought about deeply. I think there's a number of answers to that. The number one thing is actually when we embark on the financial district, for example, we have engaged various different experts to do market studies and to see on a detailed level what would the market be looking for and what would the market want. One of the key findings that was reported is the fact that actually whilst there is definitely going to be a lot of office space that's coming up in KL, but the differences between the various different office spaces is telling. For example, the fact is that KLCC, the only well-known address in KL with really grade A plus office, with a grade A plus infrastructure, with a grade A plus access, is still in high demand. They can charge an arm and a leg for their rental, and they're still kicking people out because they're making space for people who will pay more. For example, Accenture moved out of Tower 2 2 years ago, and they moved to Gardens because the rates there are just high. The next tier are actually the not so good addresses, the not so good infrastructure, and there's a lot of that. KLIP aims to be the KLCC and even better it, because we believe actually that our location in KLIP has potential for even better road access. And those of you who have been in Suria KLCC and tried to get out to Jalan Tun Razak at rush hour will know about this. So we reckon that we want to take the learnings from KLCC, the Suria, the complex itself, in terms of the highway connectivity, and really build a good infrastructure at KLIP such that the demand will be there. And remember, our target market is not only domestic customers or investors, it is the international investors. And the international guys are looking for really world-class Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, Canary Wharf, Hong Kong Financial District type of environment and type of infrastructure. So, short answer, yes, conventional wisdom says there's a lot of office space becoming available, but we see opportunities in the select segments. Of course, the development of KLIP is going to take a number of years. We have the flexibility to accelerate or slow down the development to see how the market is like. So over the next 3 to 4 years, we will see if there is good demand, and if we have faith that the EPP is going to take impact and more companies are going to be operating in Malaysia, that our gross national income is going to go up, there will be significant opportunities for us to provide for that. Because remember, it's a big machinery, right? So if there's a lot of demand for our services industry, but they don't have a place to actually put their people in, they will be turned off and they say, I want to operate out of Singapore, I'll fly people in every day, which is happening now, today, a lot of it. Because Singapore is able to offer individuals such as yourselves, the really mobile, smart, demand a lot professionals who wants not only to have a good working environment, you want to have a good place to go to after work, not maybe Nico, but a good place to go and just have drinks and hang out with friends, have a good place to have dinner. Weekends, you want to go have fun, watch a movie, watch a show. So these are the things that Singapore actually has thought hard and is providing. So there's Marina Bay Financial District, for example, there's Marina Bay Sands, there's the famous Durian Esplanade across the bay. So they are providing that. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't be providing that and compete, because on a like-to-like basis, we still have a lower cost than Singapore.
If I can ask you a question, I think relatively you are a young CEO in a big and very important company. First of all, did you plan to be a CEO at such a young age? And what does it take for you to lead a very important project and working with the government especially? And we all know it's very difficult to work with the government.
Well, I answered the last question first. Actually, working with the government, it takes a lot of patience for sure. My last assignment in Accenture was actually working with the government sector, so I've had some exposure to that. But again, it's different when you're a consultant to the government and when you are actually transacting with the government. It's a bit different, and I think to the government's credit that things have moved more positively a lot for the past couple of years. I think the efforts of the government in terms of the GTP, changing the mindset. But unfortunately, I think the farther away you get from Putrajaya, the more difficult it is. Our friend here in Johor will testify to that. So what did I plan on being a CEO? Good question. I don't think I ever set in my mind after I graduated to say that, oh, by the age of 40, I'll be a CEO. But I did set in my mind that by the time I'm about 35 or so, I will want to be in a position to make a difference. And so it could have been in Accenture, it could have been somewhere else. And so the desire to just make a difference has always been there. And I think that as I was consulting and I saw, especially when my clients were government agencies, and I saw opportunities to make a difference, and I remember the big discussions on the internet and around in coffee shops in 2008, especially in 2007, that a lot of people were frustrated with the speed the country is moving, the way the country is moving. And so at that point in time, I actually made a decision to just stop talking and start doing. And that, I think, was the big catalyst for me to actually choose to go and find opportunities outside of Accenture where possibly I can contribute more than just blog postings and reading blog postings and commenting on blog postings and talking to friends, to actually spend the effort, the time to channel the energies in a positive manner. So when the opportunity came up as TIA, I saw what it was. I saw it was a very risky proposition. It's a new organization. Source of funding is borrowed funding basically. But it was an opportunity to really contribute and to really put essentially my money where my mouth is. So it's basically stop talking and start doing. And we are where we are right now. So I'm glad that I made the move.
Okay, maybe. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
I think we can hear. Yeah.
I'm Zaini. Okay. I have a couple of micro issues on infrastructure. Okay. One is building facilities which are friendly. I notice we have first-class infrastructure, yes, but some are not friendly. Take for example the Bandar Tasik Selatan terminal. You have the Bandar Tasik Selatan there, and then the LRT is over there, and then the bus is over there. Imagine, even a young person, no problem, I can walk. Even old guy, finish. Then if it rains, lagi habis. Why can't you all look into this? For example, you look at, if I may make a comparison, you go to Dhoby Ghaut, Singapore. Again, about 6 or 7 levels. You have the MRT, north, south, east, west, all there. There's a main interchange there. You have a shopping complex there. Okay. You have restaurants, everything there. And then you want to take a bus, you just go one level down. You want to take a taxi, go another level. And rain, shine or whatever, no problem. You don't have to walk more than 100 steps. Okay? Not more than 100 steps to get to all these places. Likewise, if you don't have to go to Dhoby Ghaut, just go to Woodlands. The first one that we see from here, from Johor, same thing. The complex is there, the bus stand, the shops, everything are all there. Not more than 100 steps. But you look at Bandar Tasik Selatan, for example, and then I have written a few letters, proposals about making things friendly. I do not know how the people in SPED or you receive them. I do know some people like Azhar and so on in MRT. I hope he listens. Now about maintenance. Have you ever gone into the KLCC maintenance room? Anybody? You can see Indonesians, Thais, Burmese inside there, clothes hanging everywhere. And that's our first class building, How can you allow such thing there? So the maintenance mentality among nations is not there. So what are you going to do about all this? So you have first class infrastructure, but the people are still third class. It doesn't jive. Okay? So please,
Okay.
you want to
Tough question.
you want to at least match Singapore, you have to overcome all this. Don't talk about being better than them lah. Forget it. Match them, you must overcome it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, there's a lot of points there, and I think that I agree with most of them. The fact is actually that even when you go to a lot of public facilities in Malaysia, you will see that it is never as good as it was when it was new. Now the question that arises is actually, why is this? And I think that whilst there is some part to play in terms of the mindset, but to me the biggest chunk of why this is so is because of funding. Now the issue is actually that when we allocate funding to go and maintain things, it's an ongoing operational expenditure. The thing is, you have to keep paying for it ad infinitum, and your cost will continue to go up with inflation because the cost of the raw materials keep going up. Traditionally, the model, for example, how it works is that a lot of these public spaces or public infrastructure, the developers will spend money to develop it, right? but the maintenance of it is done by the municipality. In our case, DBKL, for example. In some cases, it's the local municipality. And so how does DBKL, for example, afford to maintain via the rates that the people pay? The rates that the people pay are, of course, subject to political pressures to maintain, and honestly, the rates that actually are being collected in Malaysia are actually quite low. You try and raise it, then there will be murder and be held to pay. But that's the funny thing, is actually that in that case, when you build world-class infrastructure, it's that maintaining a Mercedes is always more than maintaining a Proton. But when you build a Mercedes and you hand it over and the guy only has Proton money to maintain it, guess what happens? You skip, right? And you try to do your best, but then you dig your pocket and say, oh, I don't have money to actually pay for this, so I just make do. So gradually it will decline. So that is something that is very real, and that is something that we need to look at very well in order to solve the problem. Now, at our developments, we are discussing ways to address this. Either you build into the financial model, when you first spend money on building it, you set aside some money to be used to maintain it that will generate its own revenue, so that in perpetuity it is able to be used to maintain your Mercedes. So not at the Proton level, but Mercedes level. That is one part of it, of course. So it ties into also the fact that why are they foreign workers maintaining? See, there's no issues with foreign workers coming in to do whatever job, so long as they do it well. Now, the issue comes is actually that when you get no money, you have to end up with the cheapest labor you can, and the cheapest labor you can have are the people who don't have to pay rental for their rooms, so they stay and sleep in your maintenance closet, because that's how they save money, and that's how they can only charge you 200 ringgit a week rather than 2,000 ringgit a month. So it all boils down to the fact that are we willing to spend money upfront and to spend money continuously to upkeep the beautiful things we have created. For example, KLCC Park is fairly well maintained, and the reason for that is actually the maintenance is subsidized by KLCC itself. So the model that we have to look at in order to maintain, given the fact that actually we still do not have a financial structure for the municipality to be able to maintain things at a high standard that we are expecting. How do we get around it? How do we actually aid, subsidize, or partially fund how to maintain? So that is one of the things that we are looking at in terms of the integration of the various different points of transport. I agree totally. You go to Sultan Ismail and Jalan Nampang LRT, on the map is nicely interconnected, but you end up having to go to the monorail via open air and so on and so forth. And it is, it's something we need to learn from, essentially. And I think a lot of people realize that. SPAC realizes that. The meetings, I believe, are discussing how best to integrate, and there needs to be, the realization of the need is there, but there also needs to be the financial aspect of it. You guys know about the big hoo-ha about the cost of the MRT. This is again not my project, by the way. This is a comment. The hoo-ha on the cost of the MRT, and I was jokingly telling someone the other night that, 20 years from now, there'll be someone who actually at the dinner party saying that, hey, those guys are back in 2010, 2011, they should have planned for everything to go underground. Stupid, why didn't they do it? Because now it's so noisy, it's so ugly, they should have done everything underground and save money, because that time, what's 50 billion? Now it's going to cost you 150 billion. So it's a matter of perspective. Whereas right now we are complaining how come our LRT is going through all these godforsaken places. Well, the reason is actually that for example, the Putra LRT goes over reserve Tenaga land because that's the cheapest way to do it. They didn't have to go and acquire land. So one of the questions come up is actually, MRT trying to acquire land at Jalan Sultan, big issue. So it is a balance, right? If you're a policy maker, you say that, okay, I want the best long-term solution, you have to end up making some people upset. And then you try and make fewer people upset, then you have compromises. And when you have compromises, hindsight is always 20/20 lah. You know, when you talk to your kids, nanti, you know, in about 20, 30 years, then you can talk to them when your kids are complaining. You say, oh, taman tu, they should have gone underground. Now it's so busy, it's so ugly, and so on and so forth. And then why is it going that way on the road rather than whatever underground? It's tough. And then it's just a matter of being able to look at things in a practical way and realize that all decisions are fraught with compromise. The more stakeholders you have, the more compromise you have to make. Because there's no way you can make everybody happy, because when you try to do that, everybody is going to be upset.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Daniel. So the government is actively involved in our economy and also businesses via ETP and also government-linked investment companies like 1MDB, Khazanah and also Equinas. Is it not sufficient to... Okay. Hello, sorry. My name is Daniel. The government is actively involved in the economy and also businesses through ETP and also government-linked investment companies like 1MDB, Khazanah and also Equinas. Is it not sufficient to just rely on private investors and also private enterprises to mobilize their businesses? And is the government merely contributing to the crowding out effect? Thank you.
Refer to economists last week on private sector and public sector. No, just kidding. But actually, the economists did have a very good write-up on this, where it looks at the models of China, of Singapore, and of emerging economies such as Malaysia, where government interventions of government, the participation in the economy is very big. There's no easy answer to it. You know, there's one school of, I used to have the school of thought. You know, I went to school in the States and they're all like a bloody bunch of capitalists, but now you see what they've done to the world economy already, and now the Europeans also. And so I used to be very much like a free market, let the private sector do it. Don't you know, government, the less, you know what Ronald Reagan said, the famous quote from Ronald Reagan. There's 7 scariest words in the English language is, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. So Reagan is a firm believer in the free markets, right? And then Reagan executed a policy where he just let everything run. But what people didn't realize actually that he put into place a lot of like social safety nets that allows for a softer kind of capitalism. But again, this is very much a philosophical argument, and being trained as an engineer and trained as a consultant also, I would like to look at it from a very issue-specific situation rather than general. So the question comes, can the private sector do, for example, infrastructure projects like the MRT? Right? And if a private sector were to do it, can they do it that delivers value to the people and to the government at a way that is equitable? Right? So you don't want to end up with a model where the risk is so high. When the private sector wants to do it, they will charge you an arm and a leg for it, right? And then when it does pan out and they make money, first generation IPP, anybody? Right? They get slammed, right? Because the situation, for example, the first generation IPP is that nobody has done an IPP in Malaysia before. No banks wanted to fund an IPP because they see it as, oh, so this is how long? 30 years, and how much capex do you have? Oh, in that case, I need to see a guaranteed revenue stream. I need to see X, I need to see Y. So without those sorts of PPAs, the IPPs would never have happened. And that's when the private sector is doing it. So then you look back, hindsight 2020, should the government have done additional power generation? Right? Then the question the government had probably at that time is actually, well, this is big capex. Do we actually have real cash to actually do it? Would it be better to get private sector to do it? So again, it's all a matter of compromise, right? Specifically, when you go issue by issue, you need to see whether it's the right thing to do for the government or is the right thing to do by the private sector. And a lot of times, the answers are not apparent immediately. The answers are only apparent after the things are being done. Plus Highway, for example, everybody thought that that was a waste of money, North-South Highway. So it was privatized, it was done. They made money, it helped stimulate growth up and down the spine of Semenanjung. And suddenly they're making a lot of money now. A lot of people are saying, oh, that's not fair. But again, it's the risk that they took, right? Because it's actually, I have this great project, I go to the banks are looking at me saying that, fine, but I'll finance you at 12% because your risk is very high. And you look at the numbers, 12%, wow, I cannot make it work. I have to charge toll at 50 ringgit per toll. Okay, that's not going to fly. So it's working the financial model and then, okay, the financing rate that works for me, for example, is 6%. So in order to get 6%, I need to lower the risk this much. How do I lower the risk? I transfer the risk over to the government. The government wants to get it done. So they tell the government, you want it done? I have to transfer some of the risk to you. And the government will decide, okay, in that case, I'll absorb the risk. So it is thinking things through holistically, and I think that unfortunately these days it's very easy for whoever to just spin in blacks and whites. And issues are never really black and white, especially again when it involves a lot of stakeholders. So it is, I mean, I'm sorry but I think sometimes we take the lazy way up and just accept people's arguments without thinking it through. And so it's like you have to analyze issues specifically. In this particular case, how do you want to, this is my consultant training because you cannot generalize and the client will kick you out. So this specific issue, how are you going to do it? What is the problem? What are the parameters? What are the compromises for each option? Lay it out, let the decision maker decide. So.
Okay, very good answer. One question from the back. Sorry. How green? No, we can hear you.
Yeah.
How green is your KLFID center? How green?
How green is it?
How green? Okay, green.
Very
Technology.
Oh, okay, technology. Sorry. Well, we are definitely planning to meet and exceed the 2020 DBKL targets for sustainable development. We are also planning to go for platinum certification, not from a building perspective, mind you, it's for a neighborhood perspective, which has been done very rarely around the world. So it's sufficient to say that we will not go the Mazda route. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mazda, where it's basically a prototype city in the desert in Abu Dhabi that's supposed to demonstrate green sustainable energies, and I will put that on a scale of 1 to 100, they will like 120, super green, sometimes super duper expensive and not workable, but they are supposed to prototype and demonstrate. I will put us at about the 70-80 range, which would put us in a probably top 5 or 10% of the world's development. So again, there's a lot of variables in there. One example I can give you is that we are working on a smart grid system within the whole district. We are talking to TNB to see whether they are interested in us piloting it. The issue with smart grids are, okay, smart grids, who knows about it? Who doesn't know about it? Want me to talk, explain what is it? What is it? Okay, smart grid is essentially a way for the grid to automate demand management. Where the demand is high, for example, one simple example, when the demand is high, they price the electricity higher. When the demand is low, they will price the electricity lower. So then you encourage people to use more electricity when the demand is low, so that evens up your peaks and troughs, and then that actually improves the efficiency of the overall system. Also, it helps to save money just by a meter reader, for example, because your meter actually is connected directly to the central network, so it's like built almost like a credit card. It's all electronic, you don't need to have a meter reader. You can also talk to the appliances in your house to manage when they use more power, when they use less power, your fridge, your washing machine, etc., etc. So the technology is already there, but the issue is actually that it is only useful when there's critical mass. So if like a kawasan perumahan with only 200 houses is doing smart grid, it's not as useful as, let's say, a whole district with 10,000 households, because then that enables the practicality of a smart grid to really show its usefulness. Now, we are in conversations with TNB on creating that for KLIT, which is again one of the first ones, well, the first one in Malaysia, one of the first ones in the region. We're talking to Indah Water about using an on-site sewage treatment system where the water is completely recycled, non-potable water comes out, used for irrigation, so on and so forth, rainwater collection, solid waste being used to fertilize, and so on and so forth. So when you walk nanti on the parks of KLIT, you realize where the fertilizer comes from. So our targets are there. To be very brief.
Okay, sorry.
Hey, Zul. Okay, notwithstanding KLIT and the other projects, one MDB seems to be very Klang Valley centric. Seeing the development should be holistic in the sense that Malaysia should develop not in KL or Klang Valley, but also maybe in far-flung states like Malays.
You're from Malaysia.
What are the plans by 1MDB? Are they plan to invest in other states as opposed to only focusing on Klang Valley?
Well, we are 2.5 years old, so we have plans. As the opportunities present themselves, we are always very happy to look at them. So it's sufficient to say that where there are good opportunities, we will chase. We are already working on a number of opportunities outside of Klang Valley. For example, you may have read in the papers about our aluminium cluster in Semenanjung in Sarawak. We are also, of course, looking at potential developments in the various different regions. It just so happens actually that KLIT and 1Malaysia are the first ones. So the idea is that we will chase after catalytic projects that bring in FDI, projects that create multiplier effects wherever they are in Malaysia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Bias. I used to work with you. Talking about enough water, there was an announcement last September about 1MDB taking over enough water together with Puncak Niaga. So there are two issues that we would like to raise. One is how viable is taking over enough water when it was the privatization before was it was a failure and the government has to take over. So now they want to re-privatize to 1MDB. And then the second issue is why Puncak Niaga? Because I used to work with the Selangor government and I think everybody knows that Puncak Niaga, Shahrol is doing the people in KL and Selangor for the water supply. So why Puncak Niaga? So from what I can see is that it's more of a arahan daripada atas or something. So I don't know. Maybe you can answer that.
Waalaikumsalam. On Indah water is actually been reported by various different sources, but what was not noted is actually our response that it was a proposal, one of the many proposals that come to us. We evaluated it, and so it looked interesting, to be honest, because the fundamental issue with Indah water is that its mandate is supposed to be to look after water resources in Malaysia. Now, water cycle in Malaysia, right? Because when you take water, you drink it and then you use it and then you dispose of it. When it's disposed, and if you don't clean it up, it goes back to the water cycle, and then eventually, as population grows and urban density grows, you will end up with very few sources of clean drinking water. So that's a very real problem when we looked at the proposal. And so enough water is mandated to actually make sure that you manage the water cycle in a way that is a sustainable manner. Of course, that involves capex because you need to treat sewage. When you need to treat sewage, there's a lot of different models that has been tried. The developer builds a sewage treatment plant, hands it over. There are issues with that fundamentally because again, it takes money to have a good process. There are some pictures that was in the proposal, so I don't mind sharing that they show aerial pictures of Penang, for example, where raw untreated sewage seeps out onto the ocean, and of course the rivers are corners. And so the issue is that in order for you to make sure that you capture and treat all sewage, especially in dense urban areas, you need to have really good infrastructure. When you want to have really good infrastructure, you need to do a lot of capex, because again, there comes that issue is that, where am I going to install my pipes? because then I need to acquire rights to sell my pipes and so on and so forth. There's a lot of money involved. So in order for us as Malaysians to continue to enjoy clean water at an affordable rate and not have to pay through our noses for desalinization or expensive treatment, we need to invest in this infrastructure. Indah Water as an entity privatized or government is unable to do this because there's a lot of capex and they are unable to raise funding because their revenue stream is affected by the fact that people don't want to pay. And you guys know this, my father-in-law insists that he doesn't want to pay Indah Water because he doesn't see them do anything, because it's an education thing. In some countries, what they do is actually they charge the price to dispose of the water along with the price that you pay for the water. So essentially, your water, if it costs 20 cents per whatever per cubic meter, they charge an extra maybe 5 cents to dispose of it. So you're paying 25 cents for the price of disposal. That 5 cents is supposed to pay for the infrastructure to dispose of it properly. In some countries, they charge with your cukai pintu, with your quick rent. So that means that actually if your bungalow, you pay this much, which is a bit like our system. But that sort of penalizes the people who don't use a lot because you pay a lot more. So you actually not putting true value of the resource. So that is still being worked on. I believe there's some legislation in Indah Water that will enable you to collect that. So the issue is, I can't comment for Puncak Niaga's reputation for screwing the people or whatever, but you need to have a technical partner who is able to implement the technologies, raise confidence such that you can raise funding to pay for the infrastructure, make enough money to pay back your debt, and that's how you actually make it sustainable. The problem is actually that people don't realize that water is actually a diminishing resource. Countries, if you read some geopolitical reports, actually countries in some of the more arid regions around the world are predicted to go to war for this. Already, for example, the Jordan River in the Middle East, right? They are damming it up. So downstream, there's hardly any water left. And in some cases, even it dies before you get to the sea. The Dead Sea, for example, doesn't get any more water because people kept damming it up. And then these things cross borders, So India and China have tension now because of the rivers coming from the Himalayan glaciers. So water is a scarce resource. We are lucky. We are in a tropical country where we have a lot of rainfall. But look, our water catchment areas are diminishing because of urbanization. So we have a limited number of rivers to draw from. And if these rivers are polluted, what are our children going to drink? It's not going to happen in our lifetime. It's going to happen in our children's lifetime and our grandkids' lifetime. So we've got to do something about it now. What the answer is up to the policymakers. But as 1MDB, we saw an opportunity. It was interesting to us to actually go and look at how do we help ensure sustainable growth of the country by making clean water available in a sustainable manner. But of course, a lot of things came out, we decided not to proceed with that.
I think, Shahrol, you've spoken a lot on 1MDB. I think there's a lot of questions on 1MDB. Maybe we can go a few steps back and maybe talk about yourself. And I think a lot of us want to hear how did this electrical engineering boy from Stanford ended up doing what you're doing now. And I think there's a lot of young people out here who wants to know what are kind of decisions and which milestone which we need to take to be where you are.
God, talk about myself again. I guess the decisions, when I look back, actually I reflected a bit this evening at dinner, thinking about what if this question comes up in terms of reflecting back. I actually was sent to RMC by my parents because my parents couldn't afford to send me anywhere else. My father was a fireman, he retired already at that time. So RMC promised to pay for everything. They even pay for our uniforms, pay for our school books, even give you an allowance on top of it. I remember getting 25 ringgit a month when I was in Form 1. Everything is paid for. So that's why I went to RMC. I was glad actually because that institution allowed me to create a lot of good friends. Most of all, actually learned a lot about leadership, And by leadership, I don't mean like your standard leadership, leading people into battle kind of thing. It's more like leadership mastery over yourself. I mean, leading self kind of a thinking where it's self-discipline, knowing yourself, being aware of where your limits are and try to push beyond those limits. After RFC, I got an offer to go to, I got two offers actually, one to go to the US and one to go to the UK. And again, this one, my sister who studied in the US said, you'll be miserable in the UK, sorry. So to go to the US. And I'm glad I did, because some of my friends who actually went to the UK, when they came and visited us, the luxuries they have was essentially like comic books, because they can't afford much else, because cost of living is so high over there. For us in the US, we were allowed to work part-time. I worked pretty much 20 hours a week for my whole 4 years in Stanford. So I had a car, I had a nice stereo, nice life. So again, that was, I'm glad I made that decision, went to Stanford. Why did I study electrical engineering? I just like taking things apart, putting it back together. I thought electrical engineering, what the hell, let's do it. The thing about, I think, studying at a good university that emphasizes sort of like a complete rounded education is invaluable. The fact is actually a good university actually teaches you how to think. It's not necessarily what you learn in books. The only thing I remember from a double E is like Ohm's law. I don't know, W equals I square R or something like that. But what I really remember is actually how to deal with different types of people, because I was the only Malaysian in my dorm room. I stayed in the dorm all the time that I was there. It was fun. There was some not safe for work stories I can tell. Also, it was a lot of fun. At 1 year, actually, Azran of R&H X was my roommate. Again, I can tell you guys not safe for work stories about it. But you learn a lot about dealing with people with different cultures, of how to interact with your teaching assistants and professors to actually get the most out of your education. I was made at Stanford, we were required to not declare our specialization until your junior year. So your first and second year, you're supposed to be generalist. So, you have to go and take X number of units in the arts, you have to take X number of units in the sciences, in the maths and all. So it forces you to actually go and get more exposed. I remember one summer I had an awesome time taking summer courses in anthropology, right? And so it was a lot of fun. It was during the summer, there were a lot of, okay, never mind, not safe for work. But, the part of the education is that, to discover yourself and to learn how to learn. I think that's the most important thing. It's not what you learn, but what best suits you and how you best learn. So it's different for everybody. Some individuals can stay at the library and learn. Some people like to interact with their professors and learn. Some people like to have study groups and learn. So you learn how to pick things up quickly and to make useful things out of them. So after Stanford, again, it was really funny because I really didn't want to come home. I was working there, I had some decent money. And then again, my sister said, okay, it's time for you to come home. So she sent her best friend over to talk me into coming home. And the best friend happened to work for Anderson Consulting. So at the time, the best friend stayed with me at Christmas time holiday, I think for about a week or so. And she sort of brainwashed me to come home. So I came home that summer, started work at Anderson Consulting. I didn't want to commit, mind you. I said, okay, I will stay and work for the summer. I still have a job back in the States. And then the work started getting more and more interesting. So at the end of about a month and a half or so, I went to the partner's room and said, hey, is it possible that I become permanent? Said, finally, he said. So I got converted from an internship position to an analyst position, and from then on, I just started doing work in a lot of different areas like technology, financial services, mergers and acquisitions, program management, and so on and so forth. I was lucky to actually get a lot of exposure in a lot of different areas. Good mentors, in Accenture. That's one of the things that Accenture I think really excels at, is actually providing you with support network and support structure, so you never feel that you are at loss. You always have someone that you can talk to, you have someone that you can reach out for help. Then, as I related earlier, then I felt the itch to actually go and do something, stop talking and start doing. So I talked to, I think, Tan Sri, then it was Dato' Azral Halmi of EPF was my client. So I know him quite well, so I spoke to him about it. He passed him my CV, he circulated it around, I guess. And so that's how my name came up for this role, because he was the chairman of the steering committee of TIA at the time. And so in terms of the decisions, I think that it's really what you can control, right? You can control yourself, you can control how you react to outside situations, you can control how hard you study, you can control how nice you are to the guy next to you. All throughout Accenture, I've always believed that the route to success is always making the people around you successful. So your team members, whenever they need help, you go and help. Your boss, whenever he needs help, go and help. Your people, whenever they help, just go help. And so that, I think, has served me very well throughout Accenture, in just making, and it's very satisfying to see your team members, your friends, your peers, your colleagues become successful. And along the way, you look around and you say, wow, I got promoted in the fastest rate in Accenture, analyst, consultant, and so on and so forth. But I give that completely due to the success of my team, because without them, you cannot be successful. You're never alone. And so, if you devote your effort and time to make the people around you successful, it will come back. Good karma, as they say. So that's philosophy, at least in Accenture.
Do you believe in work-life balance?
Definitely, work-life balance. It varies on an individual basis. I believe that everybody has a choice, has choices. I think a lot of people are stressed out because they feel that they're not in control. Oh, I have to finish this. Oh, I have to stay back late. I have to do this, I have to do that. It's a matter of getting it clear in your head that actually there's a choice. You have a choice to actually limit the stuff you accomplish at work and accept the consequences of that, which is the next guy who doesn't have a life, who has 18-hour work days, is probably going to be promoted faster than you, but it's probably also 50% chance higher of killing over, right? And no girlfriend or boyfriend. That's my point, right? So you make a choice. So if your choice is that you choose to deliver to the expectations of your supervisor and work it out up front, and then you choose to actually go and have a life and spend time with your family, go dating with your girlfriend or boyfriend. You are a happier person, but you don't blame yourself for being happy. So that's my point. Is actually a lot of people, they make the choice to go out at night, to not work over the weekends, and then when they see their colleague who works weekends, who don't have a life, get promoted faster, get that big pay increment, then you are unhappy. Because it's a choice you make, so you live with it. And then if you really go through life thinking about, okay, I knowingly made this choice to go here, and you accept the consequences of that choice, you end up being a much happier person no matter what or where or how much you are paid. Because what's important really is actually whether you are happy here. A guy who gets paid like, I don't know, 100,000 a month or 200,000 a month may not even have time to enjoy the money because he's always so busy working. Right? He may have a sports car that he never drives. He may have a big house that he's never home at. So it's again, if you choose to actually go and enjoy life and do enough, there's a lot of the Mat Salleh Angmos are very good at this actually. I learned to scuba dive, go around the world and teach scuba diving. And they don't care, they sleep in a shack, they just go but then they really enjoy life, they get a lot of experience from it. But it's a choice they make. They don't come and go, wow man, I wish I would get paid a lot. It's a choice you make. So you live with those choices. So work-life balance, to me, is actually that there are peaks and there are troughs. Sometimes my wife gets annoyed with me because I couldn't put down my BlackBerry, and then I read the warning signals. Okay, Vicky. And then there's a way, for you to turn the light off on BlackBerry. I learned that the hard way. So before she tosses it into the toilet, better learn. So it comes in peaks and troughs, and I think it is also helpful for you if you have a support structure, either your significant other, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, to make sure that when the peaks come, if you think work is really important, that they are there to support you and they're not tearing you apart. I think I've been lucky in that respect to have a family that's very, very supportive, very understanding of the demands of the work, and so we go on vacation once in a while. I remember one time, supposedly a weekend away in Bali, me and my wife, I was on the phone like 3/4 of the time, and then my wife was very understanding. She said, okay, I realized there's a very important deal, we scheduled the thing earlier, the thing happened, we went on another vacation, but it's important to get that support structure, to get work-life balance.
Okay, maybe get some questions.
Alright,
Maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Vincent. I'm from a youth training company. And with your experience being CEO, and I believe that you have quite a number of Gen Y working for the company, if you could, in your opinion, what are the top 3 challenges that you face with Generation Y in workforce? Thank you.
Gen Y, very difficult, man. So, now, all kidding aside, actually, you hear a lot about this, like the millennials, the Gen Ys, and then the Gen X. Whilst it's easier to generalize, I normally don't, because it all depends again on the individuals. We have only 100 people in the company. We treat each one as individuals with individual needs, wants, aspirations, and issues, if any. Definitely, I think the younger generation are IT savvy. It's a lot easier to get them to actually go and check their Blackberries than BBMs. Every so often, they find it easier to actually go and attend a talk and Blackberry at the same time. I must call. It's the generational difference of that. So IT friendly, IT savvy, a bit shorter attention span, very passionate when given the right sort of purpose. Gen Y, I think generally the younger folks expect a lot back from their employer, as opposed to the old people like me, where devote your life to your employer. They expect, okay, what is the value proposition the other way, which I think is the right way to go, because in the end, it's a give and take, right? You take a part of my life as an employee, and I expect my value to be enhanced by adding value to you. So it's either via training, either via exposure, either via knowledge, right? So it's a good trend, I think, where actually, in the sense of the balance of power is not only with the employer, but also with the employee. It allows us to actually have more flexible, dynamic teams, so not so hierarchical. I think the younger folks have no compunction about knocking on the CEO's door. Actually, my door is always open anyway, so they don't knock, they just come in. And talking and then explaining what's on their minds. It's definitely interesting, trying to get the best out of Gen Ys, and I think, but once you get the best out of them, you will really get a lot of output. But be careful, a lot of output usually is like 2-3 years, and then they get bored and want to do something else. They want to be CEO already.
Okay, we have another few questions.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Brian. I'm from United Nations and Junior Chamber International. Just want to ask something concerning the 1Malaysia done earlier, right? we have already done the submission in May last year. Of course, we have already sent a lot of emails and call and visit the office. Mentioned that still pending because a lot of submission. So would you consider if submissions from NGOs which have been endorsed by the government's ministry, like maybe tourism or even sports, would that put in consideration to have a look on those applications first? Thank you.
Maybe we take a few questions.
Shahrol, you stayed in Accenture for 13 years, which is rather rare. I mean, it's quite a long time. So why don't you stay on in a client-facing environment for so long, 13 years? Have you ever thought of resigning at some point, or you accept your recent appointment?
And you are what?
Sorry, I'm also a client-facing environment.
Okay, maybe just take it. Or there's one more question, yeah.
Should I just speak this way?
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Vishal. I admire the direction that the company is taking and you guiding where things are going right now. But I was wondering, are you involved in any CSR activities, corporate social responsibility? Could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
I'll start with the last one first, because CSR. When we first set up TIA, we knew that actually because of the greenfield nature of our projects and because of the goals of really doing projects that have very long-term objectives, we know that actually our returns are not going to be visible to our stakeholders, meaning that the rakyat, as well as the politicians, as well as the civil servants that we have to deal with, until very late. So we knew that actually it is important for us to have a way to contribute back to the society almost immediately. That is why we actually set up Yayasan 1MDB, where we seed funded it with a commitment from our side, depending on, of course, our profits of 100 million ringgit. Now, CSR is a very important platform for 1MDB to go, and again, remember that our mission is to actually go and catalyze sustainable economic growth. One of the big factors that actually I believe that this country needs to work on is actually human capital development. There's a lot of, for a long time actually we have been focused really on the so-called top 5%, top 10% of the population, the ones who actually, like you guys spend, scholarships and so on and so forth. But what happened to the 60%? The ones in the middle? If you're familiar with the bell curve, there's the usual 15, 15, 70, right? The medium guys are actually the ones who actually don't get a lot of attention. So our CSR focus is to actually go look at human capital development, education, poverty eradication. These are all interlinked. We have a number of programs already. I can quote some examples where, for example, we have identified these places called Rumah Aral in Sarawak in the rural areas, because the schools are situated in the central area, but the people, the natives or the orang aslis, they have to walk so far to get there on logging roads. Actually, it's very dangerous for the children because they have to walk pretty much when it's dark. So what happens is actually, and it takes them so long, what happens is actually that the parents, usually the mother, actually will take the kids on like Monday morning, stay with them until Friday, and then go back. The halfway houses that they have been using are actually just cobbled together, because by community they say, okay, it's important our kids get education. They just cobble together whatever land they have, whatever pieces of wood they have, they just cobble together. And a lot of times these are very worse than kandang kambing. It's like, so as part of our CSR, we identified a pilot group of 13 of these. We spent some money, build them proper houses, halfway houses with sanitation, with running water, with cooking facilities, and so on and so forth, that will enable them to actually send their kids safely to school, stay there, and then go back. So the pilot group of 13, I think we are exploring to build more in these very rural areas. And you got to admire the spirit, right? You walk 6 hours to go to school. You gotta admire. So you have to actually go, and they already made so much effort to do so. The least we can do is to make a difference such as that. So similarly in Sabah, we were distributing, torchlights and I think baju hujan for some of these kids. So we try and identify those groups that have been missed out or gaps. In terms of scholarships, for example, one of the things that we do identify groups of people that have traditionally not been addressed. For example, there's some religious school graduates who have good grades, but because they're from religious schools, they don't qualify for a traditional scholarship. So we give them scholarship, pay for them to actually continue tertiary education. One interesting example is this tuition center called Sri Murugan, where it caters to the Indian community. Tuition center motivates the students, and the interesting approach that they have is actually they go and brainwash the parents also, because you know that a lot of times when you spend 6 hours in school, you spend another 2 hours in tuition, that's 8 hours, the other 16 hours are spent at home. And if the parents are the ones who actually don't care, then the kids also don't care. So what the approach is for these SMC guys is actually very good. They started out in 1972, now they have, 5,500 tuition centers around the country, where they bring the parents in and they motivate the parents as well. So when the kids go back from the tuition, the parents are the ones who actually go and study. And it worked, because there's a lot of the kids who actually got very good grades. They went back to become tutors for SMC as well. So this is something that we support as well. So there's numerous CSR programs. You can go to our website and find them. The director of CSR is right there, the handsome gentleman with the hand raised. So we do a lot of CSR. We will continue to seek out the groups that actually need help. And relating to that is the Dana Belia question. Now, Dana Belia is specifically a fund that we created to create this competitive spirit amongst the youth to actually go and compete for a pool of money. It's a bit like, don't know whether you guys are familiar with the Ansari X Prize in the States. It's like 100 million. 100 million for the first spacecraft that can go into orbit, come back and go back to orbit within 1 day. It's basically a prize to stimulate thinking and stimulate competition in this area. So similar to that, Dana Belia is not meant to be given to anybody who asks for it. It is meant to stimulate competition, to have projects that actually require sort of that nudge, that tipping point. What we seek are the projects that would have happened anyway, because it's driven by passionate people. They really believe in what they're doing, really believe in contributing back to society, giving part of themselves, their time, right? And so we give that tipping point, that money, because this is something that would have happened anyway. We are not looking for people who say, oh, I have an idea, let's do this $10 million project, because that's venture capital. So we want to go and do this. Having said that, the Dana Belia, the process is quite rigorous. We have a committee that looks after it. We have another committee that looks at the appeals. So the process, I admit, can be improved to be speedier, and we can communicate back better. But if you go and inquire specifically about your status, I'm sure we will try and get back to you on that. Why did I stay so long in Accenture? I was actually honestly very happy in Accenture. It was challenging work, it was a good support network, amazing set of mentors. So at very few points actually I contemplated leaving. Probably once in my 5th year, and that's only for a short while, and then after that it's all good. Why is that? I guess it's part of that, like happy with what I'm doing. I felt that I was creating value for myself and for the client. I was learning a lot, amazing amount. Like drinking from a fire hose, they have really good training. You get to go to the States. I remember the firm treated me very, very well. I remember at one time that as a consultant, I was teaching partners. I was actually faculty for course for partners, because this is during the early days. You guys don't remember the dot-com boom back in the day, I think in the early 90s, where nobody really knew what this internet is, and a 9600 kilobit modem was fast. You guys probably don't even know what a modem is. So I was teaching, a bunch of senior people about the internet, e-commerce and all that. So the opportunities given for people who are ready to accept the challenge are there. And so that's what I really appreciated about Accenture, which is why it was very hard for me to leave. But again, it was a decision made to actually, it's time now. So I felt about 13, 14 years, I had actually had a bit of experience to contribute back to the country. I decided to take up the role, and I've been continuing to learn ever since. The first thing we did was to issue a 5 million ringgit sukuk. My God, I was just thinking to myself, my signature on this 5 billion thing, there are a lot of zeros there. So you learn a lot of financial advisors, learn a lot from government, from other consulting companies as well.
Okay, I think maybe we have the
short break video.
Yeah, just a video.
So let me just preface this first before you ask. This is again developed at about the same time. Our vision of what the Sungai Besi development is going to look like. It's a bit short, but you can ask me what we have in mind after this. One of the things that we really are quite excited over is this community policing concept. And I think because we are government owned and because this is a national project, so we are in a position where the IGP himself is quite supportive of this community policing concept, where essentially the idea is that, remember some of the movies in the States where the sheriff actually is a guy who lives in the community, so he knows who the troublemakers are, he knows who the strangers are, he knows exactly what's going on in that community, right? So our idea of community policing is something like that, where the police actually lives in the community. So he would know everybody in the area. So that's what the image there was supposed to convey, is actually he knows the kids, he knows the adults, and he knows anything unusual is happening. So it's more like preventative crime prevention, where of course there's a lot of considerations for that, like thinking, oh wow, these are 500,000 houses, how can the cops afford to live there? How many people do you need? You need to actually go and have special qualification. So these are all details that we are keen to work out, because this is the concept that we believe will contribute a lot to the security of 1Malaysia and the development. And again, this is something that we want to try. And I think the important thing to note is actually that the failure is if you don't fail once in a while, you're not trying hard enough. So my worry is actually that now the environment in this country is actually very unforgiving of mistakes. Admittedly, there's some really bonehead stuff that's happening out there, but I think some of them are actually people trying to do something different. Because we may not succeed, but we learn from it and figure out what to do to make it better. And I think that's the thing that I'm worried about in this country, is actually that the environment that, if you make a mistake, you are ostracized forever, so people are really afraid to try anything new. So I do everything what I did last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, and you know what the result of that is, like you don't get a different result. So we end up where we are. Even when you try something, you try and mitigate all the risks, but there is a chance of failure because it is something new. And when it is something new, when it does fail, a lot of great companies around the world actually reward the failures, saying that good, you had the courage to try, you did all the right things, now here's another chance. What I see in this country right now is actually that when you fail, you're gone. In some cases. In some countries, they still tolerate that, but wow, I mean, if you don't tolerate any sort of this, one of the things actually that is really different, for example, with us and the United States, for example, is our bankruptcy law. A guy can start out a business, his own money, cannot make it work, becomes a bankrupt, and then he's ostracized for life. He cannot become a director anywhere, he cannot have a loan, he cannot do anything. Whereas in the States, you're bankrupt, 9 years later, you're good to go. But that's where innovation comes from, because you celebrate people who are actually, like Steve Jobs was saying, like, don't try and be conventional. You celebrate, don't be normal. You celebrate innovation and you try and do it. Of course, there are controls that need to go put to place, but you are, I think, takut lah. I mean, we're moving towards the stage where you really don't tolerate any non-conformity, and that I think is a very dangerous trend.
Okay, amazing stuff. We have just 2 more last questions. After the session, usually you can ask more questions.
I don't smoke cigar.
We have 1 question. Okay. Okay, but you have asked questions, but you can ask questions. Yourself and yourself.
Hi, my name is Jason, recent graduate from Australia. Just wondering, regarding all this development here in focus in Klang Valley and Kuala Lumpur, would this just widen the income disparity between those living in KL, Selangor, and those living in other states? And would it make it like a very elitist sort of feel, especially in Malaysia now with different other policies in place? Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sean. So your concept is mostly surrounding around green. So I want to ask, you can create various big, impressive infrastructures that are green, but if you don't change the mindset of the locals and the standard of living of the locals, how do you, get their support? You can say that green will ultimately save our home, but how do you implant the mindset into the locals? Because in Asia we're industry and we're not really concerned about the environment. So what is your take on that? Thank you.
Alright, I'll just answer Sean first. It's actually, the green concept, right, where it takes a lot of moving parts. People have to go and, for example, just sort out their garbage, paper, plastics, glass, and all that. How many of you do that? Right? The reason why you don't do that is actually because there is no value to you, right? And so it's a common problem everywhere around the world. And the way that governments are supposed to look after the long-term interests, right? And so governments are supposed to steer behavior in a way that is beneficial to society in the long run. One example is actually, ideally, government would encourage you to exercise more, don't smoke, and drink less, so that you will be healthier in the future, so that then the government's health bill is going to be less. It's called wellness and preventative healthcare, which is something NHS and the UK are doing. It takes a lot of things in Malaysia, especially, when I look at the specific issue in Malaysia, for one thing is actually our electricity tariff is too low, it's subsidized, because then it encourages wastefulness, it encourages people, basically there's same subsidy for everything. So a guy with 5 aircons in his room gets subsidized, in his house, gets subsidized more than the guy with no aircon and 1 rice cooker. So how fair is that? Right? So subsidies actually is something that we really need to look at in terms of making the true cost of not being green apparent. So an example again is petrol prices. Again, you reward people who use up more petrol because you get subsidized more, right? So you're not putting the true price of the pollution it costs. So what if, right, it's possible to actually, in a development, to go and charge realistic tariff, but reward people for using less? What if it's possible to reward people for sorting their garbage, reduce their garbage collection bill, right? What if it's possible to use all these sort of nudge and levers to change behavior? Because in the end, right, we were all kids once. We work on the basis of reward and punishment. So if it's going to reward you to behave green, then you will behave that way. So that's how you change mindset. So but then again, it's fraught with danger, right? Someone talks about increasing electricity tariff. Wow, next government, so it's actually and then look, the fact is actually one of the things that I really disagree with is actually giving water away for free. I mean, that's to me is actually encouraging waste. So we can have a debate about that. But again, water is too cheap because you're not factoring in the true cost of the whole water cycle, the disposal of the water and so on and so forth. So when things are cheap, people waste. You know, when you get free water in your office even, right, the water keeps flowing. You know, how many times you just pour the whole water down the sink? It's exactly that sort of behavior. So if someone pays for it, then it becomes dearer. So that's how you change behaviors. And you don't change behaviors or mindset overnight. Unfortunately, it starts with you guys, the young people, the influential people, the corporate professionals that you are, to actually do and set examples. That's why the government, for example, is saying that hybrid cars, no tax, is cheaper for you. It's actually a good deal, like government subsidizing you, or rather not charging you tax. So they're trying to change behavior. Could do a lot more, but then again, it's compromises. You know, I think politicians, number one, what is the number one thing politicians want? To be re-elected. So in order for them to be re-elected, they cannot afford to do things that would anger the electorate. And that's, I think, the fundamental challenge we face is actually the balance between wanting to be re-elected, but then as citizens we can play the role. Hey, look, you want to be re-elected, you got to make the hard decisions. Right? Sugar subsidy is an example. Right? You touch the sugar subsidy, boom, gone. But that is actually really bad for you. Right? The fact is actually the reason why your can of Coke has the equivalent of 7 tablespoons of sugar is because it's cheap. Like you taste the Coke in the States, it's not as sweet. Right? And the gigi is all falling out already because so it's actually bad for you. But then when we don't hold our politicians accountable, we don't make our voices heard saying that, look, sugar subsidies are bad, I want it to be removed. Not enough. So then we blame the politicians, no political will. You know, don't want to do that. We take accountability of the behaviors of our politicians. You know, we elect them, they are accountable to us. So we tell them what to do. Income disparity. Would this be what specifically in Bandar Malaysia? The plan, that brief that we have given to the master planners is that it cannot be elitist. It cannot be an expensive, rich people enclave. We have committed to X number of units of affordable housing there. We are planning it for it to be a ghetto where it's separate. No, you poor people stay there. We are planning for it to be fully integrated where they share common facilities. The vision for Bandar Malaysia is again for us to work on a model where it is a community where people can get together regardless of race, color, creed, religion, or social status. Share common facilities. We work on the basis of your affordable housing shouldn't look like it is cheaper than the rest. It should be integrated. Now, it's a big challenge. A lot of people tell us that actually, wow, this is almost impossible to do. But look, I mean, this is why we want to do something different. This is why we want to go and learn from the HDB guys. We want to learn from the Hong Kong Housing Authority guys. We want to learn how to make it work and then learn how to make it better, because we only have to set the challenges for ourselves and then go for it. Because we have to believe that the quote that I like recently is actually, first you must have the courage to believe in yourself. And when you believe in yourself and you believe that you can do it, and people are tolerant of your trying and not working, or failing, then we can actually go and achieve something great. Now, in terms of income disparity, I think it's a global problem. Unfortunately, the capitalist democracies, the societies are more biased towards people with a lot more political power, which is the people with needs, right? And so I guess the challenge we have in Malaysia specifically is to be able to create opportunities for people. It definitely does not make sense to just keep handing out money. You need to create opportunities for people to have what I call social mobility. I was the son of a fireman. I managed to get a decent education because RMC took me in, and from RMC it became Stanford. So I got the opportunities already, but then I got to work for it. You know, I was the top student at RMC. At Stanford, not so well, but you know, made it through. But you know, you have to work for it, and given the right opportunities, people can be successful and they can move. Now the problem is actually that you look at the side, sure, if you have money, you can go to the right schools. When you go to the right schools, you have the right networks, and you have the right networks, you can be. So you end up like the WASP, the Americans, like the Harvard, Yale going people, right? So this is something that as a society, you and I, we have to be conscious of and work towards creating opportunities for the disadvantaged. And that's what our CSR is doing. We identify the groups of people who would have otherwise not have gotten the opportunity. One of the things that we do also, I like to point out, is actually we seek people out who wants to do the different kind of majors. Now, traditionally, the government gives scholarship, doctor, engineer, accounting, what else? The standard. Nobody gives a scholarship, for example, to do architecture. Nobody will give a scholarship to do sociology or art history. There's a lot of PPEs now, but you know, we need that to have a civilized society. We need to have a well-rounded society. So we seek out those people who actually would have otherwise not been able to make it. But you know, 1MDB is 100 people. You know, we have pretty good government backing, but we need all the help we can get. So I think on that note is actually that I beseech you guys to actually spend your energy in a positive manner, right? Figure out something what you can do. If there's the spheres of influence, like Stephen Covey, punya principle, saying that look, you can control how you react to things or how you behave. You can influence people around you, but there are certain things you just have no control over. Right? So rather than spending your energies complaining about things you have no control over, spend the energies on what you do have control over. Get together, apply for Dana Belia Grant, feed the poor, figure out how to create. I have a challenge for you guys. Create a paint that actually is proof against those along stickers, right? Because then you paint that thing, you just use a high pressure washer and it washes off. Right? I want to do that at KLIP, so the along come and stick the stickers, I want to just wash it off. So that is something you can do. If you do that, then we'll give you a prize. So that is something that really annoys me, the along stickers. So things like that, right? Innovative products, innovative things that actually are real needs, but nobody has thought about yet. Just go and do it. Figure out how to get your friends excited, figure out how to get yourselves excited. Get it done, and along the way, even through the failures, you will have hopefully learned a lot. That's it.
Thank you.